Renault à la Scala.
Renault Mégane AS.
Connecté, autonome et électrique.
Bonjour à tous, bienvenue à la présentation.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the presentation of the financial results of the Renault Group. Thank you for having come here, and thank you also to all of you who are following on our YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on the internet. So I'd first like to attract your attention to the warning that you have up here on the screen concerning this conference. It's going to be in three parts. Mrs. Delbos, who is the CEO of the group, will present the financial results. Mr. Carlos GHOSN will then talk about 2017 and the future prospects for 2018, and then we'll take Q&A. Mrs. Delbos, you have the floor.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to announce record performance for Renault. Our revenue up 14.7%, reached 59 billion euros, and our operating profit stands at operating margin stands at 6.6%, up 20 basis points. This margin includes AvtoVAZ's positive contribution to the tune of 55 million euros. Our free cash flow reached 945 million euros. Before getting to the detail of the financial results, let's have an overview of our sales performance, which we announced on 15 January. Registrations were up 8.5% to 3.76 million, including Lada, 336,000 units. Without Lada, the increase would have been 7.6%. This performance was due to a buoyant market in Europe, up 3.3%, and a stronger than expected recovery in a number of emerging markets. All regions made a positive contribution to the performance. Europe was up 101,000 vehicles. This reflects the sustainable performance of B segment cars of Renault, but the growing success of Dacia. The MI region increased its sales to the tune of 41,000 units because of a new business in Iran, and in spite of our decline in India because of a very competitive market. In Eurasia, registrations were up 88,000 cars, including Lada. The region benefits from the recovery in the Russian market and the successful new launches. America's up 35,000 units thanks to recovery in Brazil and a dynamic Argentinian market. Moreover, even though we have a strong order book, Quid has so far made little by way of contribution. Finally, Asia Pacific was up 29,000 registrations thanks to China, where sales doubled. Conversely, business suffered in Korea, where Renault Samsung Motors was penalized in 2017 because of a lack of new models in what is a very aggressive market. Let's look at revenue now. Revenue reached 58,770 million euros, up 14.7%. Revenue, the automotive revenue, not including AvtoVAZ, was up 9.3% over the year to 53,530 million euros, as you can see on this slide. Growth in H2 was not as strong as in H1. This is because H2 in 2016 was pretty high, so the comparison basis, and there was a negative currency effect in H2 2017. AvtoVAZ's revenue, which is consolidated for the first time and not including eliminations, stood at 2,727 million euros. The revenue of our bank, RCI Bank, was up 11.8% to 2,530 13 million euros. Let's look at variation in revenue. On this slide, you have variation not including AvtoVAZ. The first part, volume, has a positive impact, 3.3 points. This is because of a 7.6 increase in registrations. But as you know, new cars only account for 2/3 of our automotive revenue, plus the sale of kits in Iran and China for CKD is not included in volume, but in sales to partners. Geographic mix is slightly down, 0.01 basis point. Model mix is positive, 0.7 percentage points because of new models in Europe, such as Scenic and Colliers, and the launch of Capture in Russia and Latin America. The price effect is positive, 1.5 points. Sales to partners are bringing us up with a positive effect to the tune of 1.3 billion euros, or 2.6 points. This is because of the growth of business in China, in Iran, but also launching of Nissan Micra being built in France. We also have a currency effect, 346 million euros down. This is because of a negative effect in Q4 and a strong depreciation of the Argentinian peso and, of course, the US dollar. The last impact, others, is 2 points. This is business outside new cars, so second-hand cars, spare parts, our own dealership network, and the restatement of our recovery of our car take-back commitments. Looking at operating profit, it stands at, not including AvtoVAZ, 2,749 million euros, up 15.2%. The margin was up in H2, 5.5%, compared with 4.8% in H1. For the year as a whole, the margin, the automotive margin was 5.1%, 0.2 points up. AvtoVAZ announced its performance last year. We are proud to announce that this company made a positive contribution to our operating profit to the tune of 55 million euros. RCI Bank contributed 1,050 million euros to the group's income, up 17.2%. All in all, for 2017, the group's operating profit was up 572 million euros and reached 3,854 million euros, a consolidated operating margin of 6.6%, compared with 6.4% in 2016. Not including AvtoVAZ, the operating profit would have been margin would have been 6.8%, up 40 basis points. Let's take a closer look at the numbers, starting with the left-hand side. Lower costs made a positive contribution to the tune of 538 million euros. Monozukuri enabled us to save 663 million euros, even though R&D expenditure was up, while our G&A was up 125 million euros to support our growth in various parts of the world and finance the digitalization transformation. As expected, raw materials increased and had a negative effect on our profitability to the tune of 394 million euros, but you had a positive effect last year. The mix price enrichment effect was negative to the tune of 230 million euros, whereas in 2016 we had a positive effect of 115 million euros. This is because we had you had price increases in 2016 to compensate a currency effect which was much more negative than in 2017. The volume and partners item makes a positive contribution, 493 million euros, because of increased registration and sales of kits of spare parts for operations in Iran and China. RCI Bank and other business made a 413 million euros. This is because of RCI's increased profitability and the accounting restatement of end of contract and rental commitments, as well as insurance compensation received. The currency effect was negative, 303 million euros, because of the drop in the Argentinian peso and the British pounds, but also reassessing items on the balance sheet. As I said, AvtoVAZ is for the first time with a 55 million euro contribution, and the consolidated operating profit is 3,854 million euros. Other expenses and income, as you can see, we have a negative figure, 48 million euros, compared with a profit of 1 million last year. Nothing unusual here. Looking at our P&L, let's look at the financial expenses. The net charge was up 181 million euros, even though the cost of debt was down. This is because of the consolidation of AvtoVAZ's financial charges, and also the adjustment, the impairment in the value of marketable securities. On the next slide, you can see the equity processing of our associated companies, including Nissan. Nissan made a 2,791 million euro contribution to our profit. This is 1,050 million more than last year, essentially because of the tax reform in the USA, but also a capital gain on the sale of their stake in Calsonic Kansai, the equipment manufacturer. Taxes for 2017 were 891 million euros, compared with more than 1 billion in 2016. This is because we had the non-repetition of deferred tax adjustment in 2016. As a result, net profit after tax is up 1,667 million euros to 5,210 million euros without including non-recurrent items. Net income would have been 4,189 million euros, up 18.2%. After the minority interest, net profit per share is 18.87 euros earnings per share, compared with 12.57 in 2016. Again, not including the Nissan non-recurring items, EPS would have been 15.1. Let's look at the cash position. The cash flow is 4,327 million euros, in line with last year because of higher taxes paid and lower provisions. Provisions for guarantees below actual expenditure. The variations in working capital requirements had a positive effect, 447 million, even though inventory was up. Investments in tangible and intangible assets were 3,891 million euros. This is almost 300 million more than in 2016, because this was expected mostly because of the increase in R&D expenditure. After 62 million of AvtoVAZ's positive contribution, operational free cash flow for the automotive section is 945 million euros. Regarding dividends from listed companies was 761 million euros, but what we paid out to our shareholders was 996 million euros. Shares bought from the French government as part of its lower stake in the company will be offered to our employees, and that means a cash out of 121 million euros, whereas the adjustments in values on various items on AvtoVAZ's assets made a positive contribution, 86 million euros. All in all, the net cash position, including AvtoVAZ, increased by 512 million euros to 2,928 million euros. The opening balance sheet was restated to 2,416 million euros after including an adjustment for the acquisition price of AvtoVAZ to the tune of 304 million euros. 2017 was a new record year for RCI Bank. For the first time, our bank exceeded the 1 billion threshold in operating profit. This 17.1% increase is a reflection of the increase in average performing assets, up 18.9% to almost 4 billion euros. Net banking income is 4.11%, down 30 points because of a higher weight of business in Europe, where margins are lower than in emerging countries, especially Latin America. It was also impacted by higher distribution costs and a gradual increase in provisions on residual values, especially to reflect the weak second-hand car market in the UK, I beg your pardon. The cost of risk stands at a record 0.11% of average performing assets, compared with 0.31% in 2016, which confirms a robust acceptation level of acceptance of files and recovery. Improvement of the economic environment meant that we have less non-performing loans and indeed reversal in provisions. Operating profits, G&A were up 1.32% of average performing assets, down 7 basis points compared with last points. And finally, the results before tax is 2.70% of assets. Profits, return on capital was 18.6% compared to 18.2% last year. This is Carlos GHOSN, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, to begin with, I'm going to touch on some of the key achievements of 2017, and then I will comment on the outlook for 2018. The strategic plan Drive the Change had two key goals. As you know, we wanted to achieve an annual revenue of 50 billion euros for a minimum operating margin of 5% measured in 2017. And as you know, we exceeded both these objectives in 2016. And as you've just heard, we did even better than that in 2017. We achieved new records in sales, in revenues, in operating profit, as well as net profit. And given these record results, the board is going to propose to the annual general meeting that we should increase our full year dividend to €3.55 per share compared to €3.15 in 2016. In 2017, we launched our new strategic plan, Drive the Future, which was built on the very solid foundations of Drive the Change, and we set very clear objectives. By the end of the plan, we intend to exceed €70 billion in annual revenues and achieve an operating margin of at least 7%. We intend to grow worldwide, especially outside Europe, where we plan to double our sales and triple our profit. We will do so while at the same time maintaining financial discipline with an objective of having a positive free cash flow every year of the plan, which is going to be supported basically by a total cumulated savings target of €4.2 billion by the end of the plan. A few weeks before we announced the Drive the Future plan, the Renault-Nissan Mitsubishi Alliance unveiled its strategic plan, which is called the Alliance 2022, and it's designed to boost the growth and the performance of each member company with a forecast of 14 million total sales. By the end of the plan, our objective is to double annual synergies to €10 billion by the end of the plan, and to invest, of course, in all of the right technologies for the car of tomorrow. We're focusing on electric, autonomous, connected vehicles and mobility services. Now, within the framework of Drive the Future, we announced plans to launch 21 new models and to complete 13 geographical extensions by 2022. Among these new models, we've already launched the new Duster, which has got off to a very promising start, and we had the Alpine A110, which was elected most beautiful car of the year in the International Automotive Festival in January. To support our worldwide growth, we have adapted several vehicles to the specific demands of several markets. For example, we adapted the concept of the Quid in order to fit the expectations of clients for Brazil and Argentina, whereas it was originally for the Indian market. We have also redesigned the Capture to meet the expectations of our customers in Latin America and India, and we adapted the Alaskan for the European market. Now, we have achieved, of course, new sales records across the group for all of its brands as well, and our market share has increased everywhere without any exception. We have rebalanced our regional mix. Half of our sales were made outside of Europe. We sold more than 100,000 units in 12 countries, including Brazil, Russia, Turkey, South Korea, India, Iran, and Argentina. And all of this, of course, while at the same time continuing our these are all markets that are now pillars for the group. In Europe, we achieved our best ever annual unit sales. Renault remained the number 2 brand in the region. Now, 1 year after the consolidation of AvtoVAZ within the group, and with 1 year ahead of schedule, AvtoVAZ returned to operating profit, and last year, with 20.5% of market share in Russia, Lada achieved its best performance and outperformed the Russian market by 5 points. So Lada was the number 1 brand in Russia last year. In 2017, we also reinforced our leadership on the electric vehicle market. Our worldwide sales were up 38% compared to 2016. Our bestseller, which is the Zoe, is sold in all over Europe, and it offers the best range at the best level of price in spite of growing competition. More than 90,000 units have been sold so far. We are also developing our presence outside of Europe. Last year, Renault, Nissan and Dongfeng formed the EGT New Energy Automotive, which is a joint venture that is aimed at producing electric vehicles that are competitive and at affordable prices for the Chinese market. The performance of the group was also benefited, of course, from the alliance synergies. Beyond our purchasing performance, we have made a lot of industrial synergies in 2017. For example, Nissan started the manufacturing of the Datsun Ready-Go on the CMF-A platform, on which we manufactured the Renault Quid in India. In our Renault plant in Flins, the production of the Nissan Micra was launched last year and also contributed to further synergies. For the manufacturing of Alaskan, Renault benefited from the one-ton pickup platform of Nissan in Spain and Mexico. And the next step is going to be the production of this model for Daimler, Nissan and Renault in the Renault plant in Cordoba, Argentina. Another key benefit from the alliance is that the Renault, of course, has access to a much larger pool of research and development beyond the amount spent by the group in 2017, which was almost 3 billion euros, which means that we do not need to make any shortcuts and we do not need to make any compromises for the current and future challenges of our industry. Another achievement from 2017 was the launch of the light commercial vehicle business of Renault, Nissan and Mitsubishi by leveraging the expertise of each company in the different segments of LCV, Nissan and Mitsubishi in pickup trucks and Renault in vans. This new business puts us in a leadership position. In 2017, all three companies offered 18 LCV models and achieved 77% market coverage, and we strengthened our presence in China with the Renault Brilliance Jinbei automotive deal, and with this we will be now covering 91% of the market with 23 models. So Brilliance is a leader on the market of LCVs in China, and it has a lot of expertise in vans and MPVs. We will take full advantage from their extensive dealer network and the knowledge of local customer needs. And together we will lead an offensive on the Chinese LCV market, which reached 3 million units per year. Now, let me take a look at our outlook for 2018. 2018 is going to be a year of moderate growth for the group. Of course, we have all the right advantages to to deal with renewed competition in Europe and also to be very dynamic internationally. There are three major opportunities in the year to come. The first is the launch of the new Duster. We are very confident in the success of this new model, which has the potential to become a worldwide bestseller as it has been in the past. The second opportunity are the alliance initiatives, as we announced in our Alliance 2022 plan, the extension of our common platforms to cover more segments, and the collaboration with Mitsubishi is going to give us additional cost savings and synergies. And thirdly, we have the ongoing recovery in emerging markets, especially in countries where we have been building up our presence for many years, and we have continued to invest in spite of crises such as Brazil or Russia, where we produce a new C crossover model that will be launched globally in 2019. Now, what about risks? The first one is raw materials. We expect headwinds in pricing throughout the year. This uncertainty around the foreign exchange rate is also the second risk, especially with a strong euro. And the third risk is volatility in mature markets because of instability in the stock market, rising interest rates, changing environment and safety regulation, and consumer behavior. All of this is going to be very hard to predict. Now, for 2018, we expect that the TIV, the global market, will grow by 2.5%. The European market is expected to increase by 1%, and we expect the same 1% increase in France. Internationally, we believe that Russian market is expected to grow almost 10%, China and Brazil more than 5%, in India 6%. Within this context, including afterwards, Renault is aiming to increase group revenues, to maintain group operating margin above 6%, and generate a positive operational free cash flow from the automotive margin. I'm going to now give you the floor for the Q&A session. Okay, we are going to take Q&A. Thank you very much. Please, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and ask just one question at a time so that we can hear from as many of you as possible. Yes, we do have a question. Yes, Mr. Ghosn, I have a question. So I'm Luc Bazizin from France 2. The question about the fact that you have talked about historic records today, and at the same time your compensation is down 30%. Why have you accepted that? Well, you know, my job has changed, which is quite clear, you know. The board met yesterday, and we discussed the new governance of Renault, and the board has asked me to take on a new term as CEO to continue to pilot Renault's strategy, but at the same time to keep a sharp eye on the correct development of the alliance, and above all, to ensure the durability, the endurance of the alliance, and to ensure also a succession plan that would ensure that we would have a transitional period that is gentle and constructive. So that's very clear. I have decided, in order to carry out this mission properly, to say that, okay, somebody has to keep an eye on the day-to-day operations of Renault. And so I've proposed to appoint Mr. Thierry Bolloré. So this is a decision that depends on me, not on the board, because he's not a corporate officer. So to continue to work with the board, I asked the board's opinion on the appointment of Mr. Bolloré, and the board approved that appointment. So Mr. Bolloré is going to be in charge of all of the operations of Renault. So obviously I am not so committed in Renault, given that he's going to be in charge of all the operations. Of course, I will pilot strategy. Of course, I will ensure that I support him, that I support the whole of the management team. But there is a change in the work that I have to do inside Renault and in my involvement in Renault. So it seems quite normal to me, as a consequence, that there should be an adjustment of my compensation that goes hand in hand with this change of scope. However, the results that you have seen are not the results for 2018, they're for 2017 and the previous years, the preceding years. So we cannot make a link between the new system, the new compensation system that will apply in 2018, given what happened in 2017. The two are dissociated. Yes, David, you have the floor on the left.
David Johan, Financial Times. You left as CEO of Nissan last year, but have stayed as Renault CEO. Does that mean there's more work to do at Renault before it's ready to be handed over? And does that mean potentially you see it as the weaker partner in the alliance?
Bon, je réponds en français. Hein.
Okay, so you know, let us make something clear, which is that the job of CEO, which is the Directeur Général in French, this is someone that the board appoints. I am not going to appoint my successor. It is the board of Renault that appoints my successor. In the framework of Nissan and Renault, it is the board that decides who is to be CEO. So what happened with Nissan is that I proposed to the board of Nissan that we should limit my role to being chairman of the board and to give the CEO-ship of Nissan to Mr. Saikawa. The board decided that that was fine, so it became a decision of the board. In the framework of the Renault, the Renault board has asked me to continue as CEO. I didn't take that decision. The board has said that they want me to continue as CEO, and I said, okay, what's the roadmap? Do we agree on the roadmap? So we agreed on the roadmap, and I said, okay, but I will continue if I can have a chief operating officer so that I can concentrate on the evolution and the development of the alliance while continuing to supervise the strategy. So it's not that Renault is the weak partner in the alliance. The results of Renault on 2017 are really record results. So that these are results that we've never achieved in the past. So it shows that Renault is a very rugged and robust company today. It doesn't mean that we can't progress. Of course, we have to continue to progress. But I think that today, the fact that I have been maintained as the CEO of Renault, this is not a defensive position. It means that the board wants us clearly to move forward, and I have said yes, based on a roadmap that suits me and that I think is reasonable. And of course, the board has agreed to have a number two in the person of Mr. Bolloré, who's going to look after operations. So I don't think that the assessment should be of strengths and weaknesses, comparative strengths and weaknesses of the two companies. I think if you look at the sales and financial results of Renault over the last 3 years, I think Renault has performed extremely well, even compared to the rest of the industry.
juste ici, puis après là, juste là.
Bonjour, Untitled des
Yes, hello. So I'm from Les Echos. Concerning the deepening of the alliance, what are the paths along which we are working? What's the schedule and what are the agreements with the state? Well, as you know, as far as the alliance is concerned, there are two sectors in which we are working and that are distinct from each other. The first one is the operational sector, which is how do we work together in order to get more synergies? How can we ensure the duplication of efforts? And how can we ensure, for example, that as far as technology is concerned, we should develop each technology for all three of the companies. The platforms should be joint or shared with different models for different companies. So all of these efforts are going to continue and will be accelerated apart from what each company does. And you'll see over the next few weeks that we will take new initiatives to ensure that we can continue to reinforce the alliance, ensure that the companies converge together, and we can develop more synergies. The second sector is concerns that people have about whether or not the alliance is durable. Of course, that is legitimate. That actually means now, is the alliance going to survive me? That is really the question. So is it durable? Can the alliance continue to be dynamic with the same mentality without the people who have set it up? That is really the question, the basic question. So beyond the work that is done on the synergies, that means we have to think about what sort of organization, what sort of structure, what sort of governance we have to set up to ensure that the alliance survives the first generation of people who set it up. And I think this is a legitimate concern, and I have committed myself to this by agreeing to accept a second mandate, and therefore my job is going to be to answer these concerns. Beyond operational questions on which we've always worked on and that we're going to continue to work on. And I must say very clearly here that in order to give this answer, I need the help of many, many people. Of course, Renault as a company has to agree with this. Nissan as a company has to agree with this. Mitsubishi as a separate company has to agree with this. The two states which are directly involved in this, they both need to agree. That's the French state, obviously, not just as a state, but also as an important shareholder, and the Japanese government, which can decide to make the operation more or less complicated or easier. When you change structures, it means, of course, that you're changing the tax structure. It also involves the problems of listing or not on the stock exchange. And so any kind of change in this structure that the French government doesn't agree with or that the Japanese government doesn't agree with, they are stillborn. So this is the context that we have to work in today. So today when we say, we have to ensure that the alliance evolves towards more durability, that means we have to find the right legal and organizational structures that will ensure that beyond our operational development, the different stakeholders can be reassured about the durability of the alliance. So this is what we're working on, and this is what I've committed myself to with my new term. And for the moment, we haven't yet fixed any limits or deadlines or anything. But you should know that we do plan to bring this to a fruitful end, because everyone agrees that the alliance needs to be durable for everyone. Renault, Nissan and Mitsubishi agree completely to this because they can see the positive impact that the alliance has on their performance day to day. And of course, the main shareholders as well, who are also worried about the maintaining of this dynamic. Leo? Leo first. If you have a microphone, you have priority. Anya Lisbon from Bloomberg News. Do I understand that you're going to be presenting the plan to make the alliance more durable by June? No, my term of office doesn't end in June. But are you going to be presenting, lines of work? And is the merger of Renault and Nissan one of the parts you're working on? Well, we haven't talked about deadlines. We've talked about work, because I have accepted my new term of office, which is going to start quite soon. It's not something that's going to be happening over time. So first of all, what is, we have to look at what is compatible with the alliance, the fact that all the parties have to agree. And then once that has been done, maybe we can take actions depending on that. We haven't defined any specific deadlines, as I said, but it's quite clear that this is part of the roadmap in my new term. So I just have one detail on the reduction of your salary. Does that concern all of your compensation or only part of it? Well, you're talking about what is paid by Renault. Yes, all of the different elements of your compensation. Yes. Thomas, from Handelsblatt, we are counting on the development of the alliance. So in the past, you were quite convinced that the structure of the alliance was the right one and that it would ensure its own development and its durability. What made you change your mind? Why do you think it needs a different legal structure? Well, you must understand that the question of the durability of the alliance, it's a very good question. For me, there is no question about the durability of the alliance, frankly. But, I'm not going to live forever. So, this question is coming up. People are wondering what happens when I leave. That is the question. So the durability of the alliance is not something that has suddenly, that became urgent 5 years ago or 10 years ago or today. It's actually today that the question is coming up. Because if you say, the boss of the alliance at one point or another is going to leave or retire, which is logical, people are wondering what's going to happen after that. For me, frankly, the question doesn't even arise. But I do understand that this question is in the minds of people who are wondering what will happen when I leave. Who becomes the CEO? How do we choose him or her? What's the process? How will decisions be taken between the different companies? Who's going to manage that? And it seems legitimate to me. So to answer your question, the question actually does not occur to me because I am in charge of it. So obviously, I know it's going to be durable. But I can quite understand that other people are wondering about this. They say, okay, what you're doing is fine, but what happens when you're gone? And that is where we need to find an answer that will reassure not just the three companies, but also the main shareholders of the three companies and, of course, the financial markets. And that's why the question has arisen now. Christian, you have the floor. Yes, Christian Schubert from Frankfurter Allgemeine. This is a personal question. I hope you don't mind, but it does also affect the company. So you've said that in the past you could delegate authority. Delegation is really not your strong point. Yes, no, I know. I've been told that I have a lot of strong points like that. So today you're going to be undertaking a role that is less operational, that is more about control and monitoring. Do you think that you're really capable of that? Well, I'm going to make a lot of effort to do that. I'm going to do my best. So my question really is, so the people who are operational, who have the operational roles, are you really going to give them full authority? That's a good question, says Mr. Gordon. No matter what I say to you, you're going to think, let's see what he does. Because after all, it's what I do and not what I say that counts. So, however, I have already passed one relay, that of Nissan. You may have noticed. I am not spending my time micromanaging what happens in Nissan. I'm the chairman of the board. There's a team that is responsible for operational work. And for the moment, things are going really well. So let's say that I am learning a new job. I'm learning to do a new job. So within the framework of Renault, frankly, the appointment of a COO is something that I wanted to do, that I proposed. And I actually defined the scope of the COO's job. And this is something that did not exist in the past, because when we did have a COO in the past, that person did not have the same responsibility, because the CFO, for example, did not report to him. Today, the CFO is going to report to Mr. Bolloré. The human resources director is also going to report to him, which is new. So we have extended the scope of his work because we all know that all good things must come to an end and that the transition has to be carried out in a reasonable and organized manner. However, I do agree that, intentions are one thing and reality is another. So, let's see. You can judge me on what I do over the next 2 or 3 years. I'm quite confident, Of course, all of this also depends on the performance of the company. So, the organization, if there's no such thing as a good organization with a company that is headed for a dead end. So obviously the proof comes from the work being done by the company. Renault has to continue to grow. It has to continue to be profitable. It has to achieve its objectives. That is what the proof is going to be. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. So a team is in charge and they have to give us the performance that we need. So let me reassure you, I am certainly starting this off with a lot of goodwill. Yes, so I'm not going. Yes, Rémi Lepay from to investir. What is it that justifies the relative prudence in the figures that you've announced for 2018? For example, the reinforcing of your competition in Europe. Do you think that you're likely to lose market share in Europe? No, no. I think, this is not linked to our own performance. We are being cautious and prudent because this is actually the result of the environment, not just in Europe, but in general terms. So first of all, the swiftness with which the costs of raw materials are going to go up is really not, it's an unknown. We have made hypotheses, but we don't know. You know that the industry has a lot of experience. So when raw materials increase in price there, it always takes some time to pass that price through to consumers. So it means that our profit margins are under pressure. And then you have the evolution of exchange rates. We've had a lot of volatility, and this has meant the strengthening of the euro, and that is not necessarily in favor of us or of other European car makers. But we don't really know what's going to happen with the euro. We don't know whether it's going to strengthen further or weaken. Nobody knows. We've taken a few hypotheses for our budget, but nobody knows. And then thirdly, there's something else that's happening in Europe, which is totally in shadow, that is going to concern all car makers in Europe, which is the WLTP procedure that is going to impact us from September 2018 onwards. And it's going to go up to April 2019. So that's going to be a period during which we have a lot of uncertainties. We don't know that the worst will happen, but we don't know that the best hypothesis is going to work out either. So we don't know how quickly the type approvals will be given. We don't know how quickly the customers will be ready to pay the new prices because of all the new technology we have to put into our cars, which is expensive. So over the last 4 months of the year, we have a lot of uncertainties. So if you add up all these uncertainties, obviously, we've been prudent. We've told you that operating margin is going to be at least 6%. So, that's not that prudent. Our threshold is today higher than the goal of last year. So, so we are quite confident in Renault's performance, but we have to admit and take into consideration the fact that there are a lot of uncertainties in the markets. So maybe this is not justified. That's why we said minimum 6%. But we'll see. Let me also attract your attention to the fact that for all car makers, the first part of the year is going to be much easier than H2, because the difficult period is going to start in September. So that's so I see sales in Europe, they went up by 6.5% in the month of January. So you might say, okay, you're being very conservative, just 1%. You say the European market is going to grow by just 1%. Well, yes, we do, because we think we're going to have a good H1 and a bad H2. It's going to be more complicated, at least, because of all the problems that car makers are going to have to not just bring in the products that are needed, but also we don't know how consumers are going to react to these products. Will they buy them? Will they not buy them? Will they move to different technologies? Are they going to go to other brands? We don't know. That's why we have kept our guidance down to a prudent level. Yes, Gilles.
Bonjour, Gilles Guillaume de l'agence.
Yes, Gilles Guillaume from Reuters. I want to change subjects now. Can you tell us something about diesel engines? Do you know what's going on with the ongoing investigation? It's been going on for more than a year. And recently we heard that there was an inquiry on the Mercedes Vito in Germany. Do these have Renault engines? And if so, have you had any news? Well, anything new on diesel? Mr. Bolloré, Mr. Gascon? No? No. Let me point out to you that we have still not been given any details about this investigation. Nothing has been vouchsafed to us. We can't say more than that. And the comments on the Vito? No, nothing special. I think you have more information than we do. There are Renault engines in the Vitos. Yes, we have Renault engines, but there are other engines that are not Renault engines. And we have no idea what you're talking about. We don't know what the problem is, so we can't obviously answer. You know, we're going to continue to work on our GMPs, on our powertrain, within the framework of the new rules and WLTP, but we don't really know what this complaint is about, so we will have to wait and see. We have one other question. Well, in that case, thank you very much. And of course, the press service is at your disposal to answer any other questions you might have.